You will see this, the brick and mortar. This is traditional instruction and then technology-rich instruction, meaning you are meeting the brick and mortar. You are meeting it online in the class. So you are using perhaps the internet. You are using your projector. That is what you meant by technology enhanced or rich instruction. While for the online learning, well, we know full time, like for Siliman, the online distance learning. In the blended learning, it's a combination of both, combination of the face to face and the online learning. Later on, I have my own arguments about blended learning and face to face or limited face to face. Now, in the blended learning, the most common delivery models is the rotational model. Station rotation model. This is where students within a single class rotate between a number of learning activities. So student in a class, I think many of you, especially in the allied health sciences, are doing this. In a blended learning rotational model, though at least one of these modalities is the online learning. So say for example, the first activity is grouping, no? And then the second activity inside the class, the second activity is outside the campus. And then one of the activity there is the online component. That is why it's called rotational model. The lab rotation is, however, students rotate to a computer lab for online learning activities instead of staying within the same classroom. So it's lab rotation. You just rotate students. Let's say, for example, Monday, group one will do that, group two, and so on and so forth. The flipped classroom is very common, not only applicable for blended learning, but even for the full online distance learning, where when the students are meet online, no more lecture, no more reading, but purely activity based or performance based. That is why it's called flip, because instruction, reading are done outside the classroom, online, and then when you meet for the limited time, that is the time that you can demonstrate your skill. And then the individual rotation, or sometimes called as sorry, for the individual rotation, this is set for students daily schedule, which allows students to rotate to some, not all, of the rotation activities based on their unique needs. I can see that what is most applicable based on IATF, the Joint Circular Memorandum Guidelines, is the individual and the flipped classroom model, because station and lab rotation model is so exhausting for the teachers, especially for big class sizes. And especially if we cannot determine on the combination of those who will go for face-to-face and those who will not go for face-to-face. So what is individual rotation? This is still exhausting, but at least you can identify. Or say, for example, a teacher will prepare three different set of rotation. Okay, just choose which one of you. MWF, we will meet the W, and then online F. The other way around, or the other preparation, is M is the limited face-to-face. The individual rotation model can be articulated also in such a way that it's not really by per student. No, baka mahihilo na tayo dyan, that all your 40 students will have their unique and own rotational model. It's not like that. You just prepare, it's just like a menu, and then students will just prepare, that one is applicable to me. Every Monday I will report, and then every Wednesday I will go online, and every Friday we will have a assessment. So that's individual rotation. The second is the flex model. Flex model is Students still learn primarily at their school campus, and then student flex model benefits from both learning at their own pace online as well as from the direct teacher guidance in their classroom. In other words, the face-to-face component plays a major role. In other words, the syllabus are prepared primarily for a face-to-face instruction. That is why I always tell, or that is why I am challenging you that make our own interpretation of flex model, because based on literature, it might not be applicable 100% for a limited face-to-face during this pandemic. Because again, limited limited, it's up to us how we define limited. It's up to us how we define the number of hours, the number of contact hours to our students, to the teachers, and others. The self-blended learning, or sometimes called as a la carte, which is another type of blended learning, students have the option to pick and choose courses to take online as a way to supplement. So self-blended. It is tasky and it is expensive also. It has implication, financial implications, because you just imagine students can just choose which among he or she wanted to enroll or to have the limited face-to-face. But as I'd mentioned, the university, the school should identify before any enrollment will do that this particular subject is face to face, this particular subject will cater limited face to face, this particular course or subject will only be delivered online. Okay, so the students, so that expectations from the students' point of view will be catered, and it is very clear to them what are expected as you go along into the limited face-to-face. The fourth one is the so-called enriched virtual model. This is more into the flex model. The enriched virtual is primarily on in-person, face-to-face, and there are gadgets or there are technologies that enhance or enrich your face-to-face. And this, again, we can have our own interpretation into this, but this may not be necessarily applicable in the limited face-to-face as prescribed in our guideline. Because you just imagine you teaching in the class in the face-to-face, and then what will happen to the other students online? You have to set up all the cameras there so that when you teach face-to-face, your other online students can also learn from you. And you have to imagine that the material that you are preparing are for face to face, and those who cannot come for face to face will just look at the video session which is done on campus or in campus. No, so there are many. This is actually a very complicated one, but my my challenge to all of us is you don't need to be very exact as to type of the definition or the modality of the blended learning, but you can have our own, we can mix and match our own model based on the available resources and the type of students that we have in our university. Okay, now um, they said that during this pandemic, high flex is the most appropriate and applicable one. High flex because there is synchronous and there is also a synchronous group. You have to take note that there could be in-person group, and there is also a so-called the online group of students, and students have a choice into that. Remember, it's not compulsory. Or what if a parent will not allow the students to attend face to face? So again, we are obliged to accept all this kind of students. So high flex because when we prepare our material here, when we prepare our assessment, all the exams, it should cater to two forms of learners. the in-person and the online student. Because after or later, I will try to give you a clearer view of this kind of learners in a limited face-to-face. That is also challenging when we do assessment and others. Okay, so this is the one I'd mentioned to you that in full person, we have the blended learning, the hybrid, the flex, and the full online. You have to take note that you might, in a class, you might have students who will only join you for the full online. You might have students that can do hybrid and can do high flex. So hybrid, that is why for you to be able to cater the two, do high flex or hybrid flexible type of learning, meaning students can learn in campus or in person, and students also can learn on campus. Okay. Um, but in this type of high flex model, we have to consider, as I mentioned, the two groups of learners in our class, the students who can do high flex and the students who cannot do high flex but can do fully online. How are you going to mix them in one preparation? How the online group and the face-to-face group can learn at the same level at and can acquire the intended learning outcomes at the same level according to the learning and according to the pacing you set in the classroom. I know naman na majority of us will go to instruction-led type of pacing. It's not really self-paced because we say, okay, on this week we will talk about this topic. That's instruction-led or schedule-oriented, time frame. Unlike with MOOCs or unlike with other online activities, they do self-paced and personalized type of learning. And again, it is a challenging issue on how we can do all these things.